Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hyperspace on Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven. I want to thank everybody for tuning in this evening, and a special thank you to webmaster and producer Keith Rowland. And my special guest this evening is Dr. Heather Lynn. And of course, she's the renegade archaeologist, and she's been on our show before. And Dr. Heather Lynn has emerged as one of the leading experts in alternative archaeology and hidden history. She is a writer, researcher, speaker, and archaeologist. Her research topics include Near Eastern civilizations, hidden history, ancient mysteries, mythology, religion, and metaphysics. Heather has explored the regions of the unknown on a personal quest to find the truth about human origins. She broke away from the mainstream after realizing that much of what we know about our history is based solely on the consensus of elite, often politically motivated individuals and institutions. Now she is on a quest to help empower the public by giving them access to archaeological news, information, and resources so that they can make up their own minds. And to learn more about Heather, you can visit her website at www.drheatherlynn.com. Her books are available on amazon.com. And please welcome the goddess of archaeology, Dr. Heather Lynn, to the show this evening. Hi, Heather.
Hi. Thank you so much for that great introduction. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. You're awesome. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great. Just warming up around here because of the cold weather. But other than that, we're doing fantastic. So, yeah. So tell me what's been going on in your orbit.
Oh, so many things. I think the last time we spoke, I was recovering from an illness. I think so. But I come to find out I really didn't have anything wrong after all. So.
Right.
The plot thickens.
Yeah, it's called incompetency on their end, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was diagnosed initially with a blood clot in my left arm, which was very mysterious, and nobody could tell me how I would have got such a thing. And so they had theory after theory, and I found another specialist. I went to the Cleveland Clinic, and I saw somebody, and they looked me over, did some scans and some tests, and they said, "You don't have anything wrong with you except some inflammation in your arm." And I said, "What? Excuse me, can you say that again?" Because here I had been treated for almost a year with blood thinners and different things, and I had to cancel a lot of appearances, and it just really put a dent into things. And she's looking at me, she's like, "No, you just probably could have used some ice and some ibuprofen and you'd have been fine." And I just thought, wow, okay, that's just, more medical incompetence, I guess. So
Totally. Yeah, it's a lawsuit, bottom line.
Yeah, so thankfully everything's fine now. And
yeah, I'm glad to hear that. But that's really scary when you think about they put you on these types of meds you don't need to be on.
Oh,
Insanity.
I know. And it was such a dangerous medication, warfarin, rat poisoning, literally rat poisoning. And so there were quite a few times I had to go to the hospital for bleeding. I would get nosebleeds and different things. And they said, "Oh, well, your levels are too high and this and that." And so I was like, this was not a fun time. And they put me on all kinds of different things. And I said, I am not taking all this medicine anymore. And I just said, I'm not going to go down this way. But thankfully I didn't have to. Thankfully I was able to get off of all that. But it still left me with a really bitter taste in my mouth for the medical system, as you can imagine.
Oh, totally. I would be livid if that happened to me. Yeah, that's not unheard of, though. They do that all the time.
Oh, I know. That's how my mother passed away when she was 50 from complications with cervical cancer. But it was a medical mistake. Actually, she was free of cancer. She ended up going to the emergency room on quite a few occasions in the same evening, complaining of having chills and abdominal pain. And they just kind of, said, "Oh, no, just go on home and rest. And you probably have a cold and these chills. This is like a fever." And they sent her home, and she died because she had a bowel burst because she was on medication that was just overwhelming her system. And so they just, neglected that and just sent her home to die. So I've never been the biggest fan of our, what is now, I believe, a medical industrial complex.
Totally. I totally agree on that one. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That's a shame. And it happens a lot. Believe me, I've heard other stories too.
It does.
But yeah, I'm glad you're doing better. I'm glad you're okay now.
Doing great.
Yeah, excellent. And yeah, you're not on those other things too. Last time you were.
Oh yeah, I was hopped up on pain meds, right?
You did great though. Hey.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So what's going on with the controversial subject matter? What's up with that? With Ebola and Sumerian texts.
Oh, it is pretty crazy. But if you don't mind, I would really appreciate just being able to give a shout out to the vets.
Oh, sure.
Since in honor of Veterans Day, I want to really just say thank you. I've been told by quite a few vets who I've spoken with that they actually get tired sometimes of hearing a generic or seemingly obligatory "thank you for your service" from civilians. But as someone once said to me, in the past, the troops fought with the country. Now they fight for it. And I think that it's an important distinction to make, because in the past, people back home made so many sacrifices during war to support the troops in measurable ways. And, war was felt by all to some greater or lesser extent. But now, most of the country goes about our daily lives while the men and women of the military make almost all the sacrifices on our behalf. And, make no mistake, there are many people here at home who are volunteering and organizing to give back to the troops in very real and important ways. But, for a lot of folks, support generally comes in the form of a yellow ribbon car magnet or some generic "thank you for your service." And this is what happens when war becomes industrialized. So I just want to say a genuine thank you to our vets with the subtext that, as a civilian, I can't ever fully understand what you've gone through, but I recognize your bravery and sacrifice and hold you in highest esteem. So thank you again to the vets, and I hope we can all work here at home to fight that military-industrial complex and the corruption that's taken so many lives and liberties, both at home and abroad. So,
Absolutely.
just thank you very much. And again, thank you for having me on. And
My pleasure. Well said, by the way. Thank you, Heather. That was beautiful.
Oh no, it means a lot because, we've been at this war for how long? It's just ridiculous. There are children today that have grown up never knowing anything but being in perpetual war. It's just shameful. It's shameful, but
I agree.
Yeah,
there's a lot to discuss, and it seems like a lot of the veils are thinning, everything's breaking down, but at the same time, we're seeing it for what it is. We're seeing the deception being played out, but at the same time, so much suffering and so many lives have been lost, and it just goes on and on. So
I think the servicemen and women are really the ones who are awake. I mean, they know, they come back and they just know.
Oh, yeah.
They really know more than any of us, and I believe that's why there's a target on them. Everybody demonizes vets, and publicly it's really cool to say, "Hey, hooray for the vets!" But I mean, look how they're being treated. So
absolutely,
1 in 4 homeless people are vets.
Right,
that's just absurd.
Yeah, and of course they're trying to criminalize homelessness, which is ridiculous.
Oh, I know.
Don't get me started on this, because you and I both can go on for hours and hours, but it's true. I mean, it literally needs to be addressed. It's so wrong, some of the things they're doing right now.
Yeah. So in terms of the Ebola, I mean, that's another thing that's been going around. No pun intended, not to me the disease is going around, but the news and the conspiracy and all these different things. So, in my research, I happened upon some information indicating there were some Sumerian tablets that spoke of potentially Ebola. And I thought, well, let me explore this a little. So, I did some research and I put out an article. But before I did, I, kind of put a little bit out there that say, hey, I'm putting this article out. Watch for it in the coming days. But it took a while to get it all together because I had to get the facts straight. There's a lot of discrepancies with Sumerian translation. And so, it wasn't something I could just spit out. So it took me a while to really verify sources and try to find the best information that I could. And in the meantime, I got hit with a lot of emails and a lot of messages that were just really, really jumping the gun on the whole thing. And so I was very surprised at how many people were interested in either denying or just saying all kinds of things that you wouldn't even believe based on just a preview of an article. So I was very glad to be able to release it today to hopefully, give people a chance to look before they judge. And that's something that I've noticed that happens a lot when you start talking about, hidden history and that kind of thing. But I know that primarily the Sumerian texts seem to really enrage people or get people talking or excite people in some way. So I can kind of understand, but at the same time, there is a lot of legitimate and genuine information, to learn from the Sumerian texts that we can't just say, well, I don't personally believe in anything Zechariah Sitchin says, so therefore everything that has the word Sumerian is wrong. Or I've had people say, well, there were no such thing as Anunnaki. Well, that's clearly not true. It's clearly stated. It's not a term that, some people made up just for some fictional purposes. These are actual terms. There's actual text out there. So it's important to not lose sight of that. So, I came across this this text, and I found it to be very interesting. It was discovered in the 19th century, so it wasn't a newly discovered text, but it's taken them so long to be able to translate it. And so in the past, well, since the past 15 years, they've been working on this. And so what they discovered was just a number of tablets that outlined what they believe to be a diagnostic for patients believed to be suffering from hemorrhagic fevers, the whole family of them, including Ebola, Lassa fever, Marburg virus disease, etc. So, they looked into this, and this was before, the Ebola hype. Ebola has been researched for quite a while. Mm-hmm. So this isn't something that, it's in the news, so these people are running out right now and researching it. No, they've been researching this for decades now. But, they saw that there were a lot of connections, and they felt pretty confident that the hemorrhagic fevers were what were being described in these diagnostic texts. So, the manuals consist of about 1,000 cuneiform tablets, and they're preserved now in the British Museum. So they still exist, mm-hmm. and they're currently being translated. They list disorders from convulsion to gynecology, pediatrics. It's very well documented. The Sumerians were well known for their recording and their detail-oriented list making. So it's a very organized record of what types of illnesses they were treating.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. So were they also talking about the treatment?
They did not, at least not in the text that they have been able to decipher. So, mm-hmm. But even though they didn't have the treatment, they had differential diagnoses included, which is kind of interesting. So it just shows that the Sumerians were far more advanced than a lot of people give them credit for. They understood medicine. They understood, a lot of things. And even though they may have associated it with figures from their mythology or story or however, that doesn't necessarily mean that their science was bad. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're interpreting it correctly either. So, when they speak of a plague coming in on the wind at the hand of a particular god, well, who are we to understand in the context of our current, ethnocentrism, what they were meaning by that. So it's really difficult. Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many things too. And so we have no way of knowing for sure, but they left a lot of detailed information that has a lot of people in mainstream at the CDC and different universities. The Charles Haynes, it was, I think, one of the first few people that started writing about this were epidemiologists, Charles Haynes and Patrick Olson of the Naval Medical Center in San Diego. And, they started looking into ancient Mesopotamian diseases. Mm-hmm. And so, there's been a lot of research into this and a lot of support in the idea that they did, in fact, have these particular diseases specifically. The benefit of looking back is to try to find out how these diseases may have evolved or mutated in a way so that we could sort of, scientists can take that data and maybe forecast how it could be changing now. At least that's what we're told they're doing. So, but paleopathologists do this a lot. They're looking into. Yeah, so I wouldn't want that job. I know that because.
Not at all. But it's interesting. It almost seems like they're trying to resurrect a lot of those viruses and plagues. When you look at the, if you want to get into the warfare aspect of it and weaponized medicines or weaponized viruses, then it would make sense that some of these underground government agencies would actually be using that and researching the data to try to resurrect some of this stuff and deploy it. That's my own background insofar as the way I look at things from a different perspective. But I find it very fascinating. Now, who's actually decoding these texts?
Well, there are a lot of people who are decoding the text. Like I said, there's some researchers at the San Diego State University. There's the Georgetown University School of Medicine in Washington, D.C. They don't really have, there's not a organized department that's necessarily going over these. As I said, they're being held in the museum still, but there are individuals who are looking into this. So, and so for instance, they might have a medical specialist from the George Washington School of Medicine go in. They have people who are writing back and forth about this. They have a whole host of scholars over the years have been trying to decipher these. And I have a full list of references and citations if anybody is interested in checking those out and researching those scholars throughout the years who have been deciphering these texts. So it's, if you want to look at that, that's actually on my blog. So you can get to that on my website. And as I said, there's a bunch of, on the article, I had a lot of citations pointing to some of the people who are actively involved, and at least were actively involved in deciphering these texts. Some of them were foreign, some of them American, and all of the information has come out in various journals they range from everything from journals put out by the CDC to things like the Tropical Medicine and International Health. So it's a pretty diverse set of people, and it goes all the way back from even the 50s.
Excellent. Yeah, that's really fascinating. Well, the thing about those Sumerian texts is that the translation can be so sensitive, and you really have to scrutinize a lot of things and look at it from a multidimensional perspective. As far as trying to decode a lot of that information, but it's fascinating, and it's definitely a big piece to the history of mankind when you start accessing and looking in. So, yeah. So when you get a bunch of people, cooks in the kitchen, hopefully they'll get it all together and get it right?
That's the hope. I mean, it's really exciting because for a long time it was such a specialty to be able to decipher cuneiform and any of these Sumerian cylinder seals, and very few people could do it. And now it's just become so much more, it's just, I don't want to say mainstream because it's certainly not. It's still a specialist interest, but there are so many people who have gotten on board trying to research this over the years, and so many different interpretations. And, while that's a good thing, it does lead to a lot of discourse. And one can argue that's really good because that's how you find the truth between people who are going back and forth and looking at things as objectively as possible. But I think that's one of the reasons it's so exciting and appealing is because, we don't really have all of the translations mapped out very well yet. And there are so many texts that still haven't been deciphered that are hidden away, maybe not even purposefully, but just, that takes time and people to go through these things. So, and then of course, some of the texts they do find they're cracked and half finished. And so it's quite a puzzle to put together. And it's just neat to see that there are so many people out there interested in doing that. And I think due to the interest in authors like Zecharia Sitchin and others, and the internet, of course, and the prevalence of this information, I think that we're going to see an explosion in researchers and new information over the next decade, if not sooner.
And is there anyone who can put the brakes on that translation? Is there anybody out there who would actually try to maybe edit or censor what's being decoded?
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I wonder about.
Absolutely. That can range, I believe, from just a general hater, if you will, or all the way up to some sort of organized disinformation agency, I believe. So it can run the gamut. It's really hard to figure out who's whom and whatnot, but that's why it's so important to criticize and analyze sources. So,
right.
Yeah, but it's definitely, I think that as with anything, there's disinformation out there. And even if it's not intentional, some people just like to get out there and stir the pot a little bit or even try to monetize things for themselves to just make something. And so we come into a real danger with that, I believe. A lot of people now are, coming in and saying a lot of things. And it's just, it puts more out there that we have to wade through. And
I totally agree.
It's good, though. It's good that we have such diversity in this. The only problem is when that diversity of idea starts to grow more than the group of people who are in it to actually decipher and analyze that data. So it gets, we don't want that imbalance of power, if you will. We want to be able to, get proper filters in place so that we can find out where the truth actually is. Because, man, I think when we do, it's going to just blow everybody's mind.
I agree. I think there are too many cooks in the kitchen, though, like you were saying. A lot of critical data gets omitted. And it seems to me, especially with alternative media, it's really hard. You have to use discernment because some of us have a lot of factual data, and then a lot of it gets swept away by all the other disinformation. And I've also heard that there are people out there that actually mix the both together, like you were talking about. They literally will mix some disinformation in with the truth. And to me, that's just such a disrespect and disservice to the truth itself. So I could never understand that, and even if they're trying to correct, kind of cover their butts, I understand they're trying to protect themselves or whatever, but not at the expense of actually masking the truth. To me, anyway, I find that offensive. So I do see that, though, and you really have to go through everything with a real, scrutinizing eyes because it's just kind of a decoding of everything. But your background in general is fascinating, and I think archaeology is one of those areas where you can just explore and take to so many different levels of consciousness. When you think about it, you're looking at vibrations, you're looking at information, all different kinds of databases. So what a fascinating background to choose.
Well, I don't know what to say, but thank you. I think it is fascinating. I know I'm fascinated with it. So
yeah, I love archaeology. I think it's wonderful. The only thing that kind of bugs me is the mainstream perception and how they've tried to manipulate the truth once again, and how they try to sway information, and that's too, that's kind of sad. But
talk about don't get me started. I mean, that's where I have a problem is a lot of well, first off, let me just say this. Archaeologists do not dig dinosaurs. We may like dinosaurs, but we are not digging for them. And these are little things that I think represent a kind of a bigger picture of the misunderstanding of what archaeology is. And so a lot of times, in the context of conversation, someone will say to me, have you found, what kind of dinosaurs have you found? And I'm like, I've not dug that far. I'm sorry. I mean, not that
Jurassic Park.
Right. I've known archaeologists who have found dinosaurs, but that's not that they're looking for them specifically, or that's paleontology. So, but it's one of those things where if you don't have that, it's really nobody's fault other than just the media depiction of archaeology is just really something else. It's either the classic Indiana Jones or the Tomb Raiders and the video games and all this stuff. And then the reality of it is far less exciting. And even behind closed doors, the people that are involved in the reality of it, they are just very much anti this public image, but then again, they're doing nothing to help their own image. They're sort of keeping it behind closed doors. So the only real way people have to sort of get in touch with archaeology as an idea is through these things that are handed out in the media. And you know how dangerous that is when you're getting your info from media. Right. So, but the archaeologists, most of them as a collective are not doing a whole lot to fix that, and especially in this country, though. I can't say that's the same for other countries, and I know the UK, they have an amazing support for archaeology, but here it's just one of those things that is going down the way of every other thing. It's half privatized, half, government sponsored, and it's just a big mix of who knows what. So, and all that does in the end is serve to isolate the public so that people, they don't know what's going on. And after a while, because they've been shut out so much, they either run to disinformation or they become completely apathetic about it and have no interest in it. Either way, people who have something to hide benefit, because what's better than an apathetic public that they don't care what you're doing, out there. They don't care what you're digging for, or a public who is just, hypnotized by fanciful stories in the media or whatever, and then they don't really care what you're doing either. They're looking the other way, so we can't look the other way.
Yeah, it's almost a generic template they're using right now to define archaeology. I agree with you on that one. But you're I like the renegade archaeologist. I love your title because that's really awesome. And that's what we need here. I mean, we need someone like you out there who's going to roll up their sleeves and actually go in and actually get the truth and get the information and the facts as best they can, opposed to all this other stuff that's going on where people are getting bought and sold or censored. It just gets ugly after a while in every profession, and I'm sure it gets ugly in yours. I can't imagine it being any different. Yeah, it's always politics. Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. No, what I try to do personally is keep an open mind, but I very much value the tools that I've been given in academia so that I can use them as they are tools. They're not supposed to be things you hide behind or support or, do something like oh, this is the only way, or this is what's right. These, there should not be so much emotion attached to simply the tools of research. It should just be, hey, you know what? Let's explore this idea, and here are the tools. Let's look through this information and disseminate it and do this properly. Because even when you're looking through legitimate academic journals, books from university press, it's just, even then, I guarantee you're going to find people who are wrong, people who disagree with each other. It's there's this idea that there's a consensus a lot of times when I think general media they'll put out little news stories or whatever that says archaeologists say, or it implies that everybody agrees, but for every one believer there's somebody else out there to argue the other point, and the whole point of academia is just arguing these things through discourse. And so even when you're looking at what would be considered legitimate sources, you got to think about how legitimate are they? And a lot of times they're just trying to bolster their own career. So it's no different than anybody in some alternative realm. It's just they're, I guess, more socially acceptable. But I mean, in the end, it's all the same. People want to, I guess, prop up their ideas or whatever. So all the way around, we just have to work really hard to remain unbiased and just look at the data and do the best we can to interpret it and give it out there so that others can do the exact same thing, and then just hope that after a while, the truth starts to become apparent.
I agree. Well, I like the constructive brainstorming. People can get together and be productive with their conversations, even if they don't agree 100%. That's the bottom line. But it's when people start kind of negating what they're doing as researching and investigators go, and archaeologists in general. I can see how it would cause some problems there, because you're really looking for the truth. And we do need archives of information and truth here. I mean, we have so much editing done throughout history that we literally need anything we can find, whatever it is in archaeology that can give us a template of where we've been and decode it at the highest level is really important. It's very significant.
Absolutely. And I think that information needs to be more accessible to the general public, because like you said before, it really has to do with like an interdisciplinary technique. You can't just have people who are trained in this one area to be looking at this one thing, or else what you're going to get is, through the lens of whatever their specialty is. It really is beneficial when you get people of diverse backgrounds, diverse ways of thinking to study the same thing and then share that information. And wow, amazing things can happen when you have a diverse group of people working on these ideas. Mm-hmm. So,
absolutely. And if people want to purchase your books now, you have the Sumerian Controversy, a special report that's on Amazon.com.
Correct.
And then also Land of the Watchers.
That's coming out in December. So,
oh, exciting.
Yeah, that's the follow-up. I know that the initial Sumerian controversy was only meant to be a kind of a report of the events that were going on in Tel Khyber. And I was hoping when I put it out that I would be able to follow up with another report and a subsequent report and just sort of keep people up to date. And I was also hoping to get some feedback from others, again, with the whole, putting it out there, having a diverse group of people sort of come back with their input. Well, I got just that. I got more of that than I even bargained for. I was pleasantly surprised, but given the vast amount of data I received, it took me a long time to sort through the good and the bad, the disinformation and the not, and it ended up being just amazing information, and I had to go ahead and stop that whole, report aspect of it and just put it into one full book, and that's going to be out this December. And
awesome.
I'm very excited to have that come out, and I'm eager to see the public's response, because the response to the Sumerian controversy was so interesting and so helpful. Excellent. And it got everybody thinking, and that's really what I wanted it to do, was get everybody sort of, just awake to some of these ideas and kick around other ideas. And some things that I'm considering, I'm looking into it and seeing this. Other people could see something else completely. And I've had wonderful listeners and readers contact me, refer me to other books to read and authors to get in touch with, and ideas that I would have never, ever in my life explored. And some of them I thought, oh, this sounds preposterous, so let me look into it more. Those are the exciting ones. And when I did, I had to take a step back from it all, to be honest. I had to take a step back for a little bit, because I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. I did not realize that through simply putting this out, something that, was, I thought, pretty benign, although definitely something controversial and that needed to be out there. I was not prepared for my mind to be blown in the way that it was with some of the information that I got back regarding things that I would have never accepted on a professional level. But the evidence was so clear that, I mean, there's no going back now. It's like, I can't unsee this. So now it's my responsibility to get it out and stand behind the information and, share it with everybody. And I guess take the backlash as I will, because I know I will.
No, I think, so far it sounds like you're getting positive feedback for the most part, wouldn't you say?
I think so. Some emails can be pretty brutal, but it is what it is. Everybody
it's the business, though. I think there are trolls everywhere, Heather.
Sure, I'm sure that's what it is.
They hide and then they surface, and I think everybody has them. Honestly,
I figured that's And somebody once told me, if you're getting flack, you're on the right track, and I thought, oh, that's. Yeah. Okay. Good. Then I'll just look at that as a plus. So
you never know what kind of bizarro people are contacting you anyway. They might have personal issues and all sorts of weirdness going on in their orbit. So, and jealousy and envy, and I'm sure that all happens as well. Especially when there's an intelligent female like you out there who's actually putting things out there on the plate. Yeah, I'm sure it'll bring up some controversy. So.
Well, I think that anytime you deal with information about ancients, you get a lot of controversy. There's right. Big division in between what people believe the ancients were capable of or who they were or what they were doing, and those that just think, well, we were all cavemen running around saying ugh, and that's pretty much the extent of it. And, and then of course evolution comes into play. So it is a very provocative subject. So I can understand why people get kind of upset about it all, but
well, it gets their wheels spinning in the right direction nonetheless.
That's what matters.
Anybody who thinks we came from an ape, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, but homie's not playing that game. So I know too much about star beings to embrace that. But yeah, I'm sure it can be very interesting nonetheless. But I applaud you for the work you're doing. I just love what you're doing out there, and I'm really happy to see a powerful, intelligent woman out there in the field of archaeology like you are, who's well respected. And by the way, you are taking off, and I'm very happy for you.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
Really
and I just want to say this too. You may not hear much of it, but collectively, the worldwide statistics are in favor of female archaeologists. There are actually more female archaeologists employed than male archaeologists. So just a little interesting factoid. You wouldn't really know that because of the way it's sort of, depicted in the media and everything. So, but yeah, so power to the ladies.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I like to see anyway, to promote the females. They seem to get shot down sometimes and I'm not trying to sound sexist or anything, but there is a male kind of ego kind of thing that happens when women start progressing and going to a very high level of intellect. They bring up a lot of issues, I guess, from some men, not all, but from some. I've noticed that anyways in different professions. So it's nice to see what you're doing out there as being effective.
Yeah, and I appreciate the men out there because some of my biggest fans are men. I get such a great amount of respect. The colleagues that I work with who are men, I thought when I went into this that it was a male dominated field and that I would get a lot of trouble. I thought that maybe I wouldn't get taken seriously or what have you, but I found the opposite. I found that people were really great. And, most of my mentors in college were my male professors, and they just were great. And although I didn't agree with some of their outlook, a lot of them were bitter and what have you, but they were very supportive. So, excellent. It's good. I think they're coming around. I think the men are coming around.
Good. I hope everybody comes around. Everybody just kind of transcends to the highest level. That would be great.
I think that's what's happening. I think now people are waking up in just such a fury. I have seen so many things, and it is amazing. People who come up to me are they know so much. My mind is blown again. I cannot tell you at least once a week, I'm just speechless. I'm rendered speechless by something somebody has told me that is 100% factual. And I'm just like, wow, the people that, have just regular 9-to-5 jobs and they are just, doing what they do. They are awake to this. They are reading. People are teaching themselves, researching themselves. People are so, a lot goes around about how people are, ignorant these days. And there is some truth to that. There is definitely a deliberate dumbing down of America, but I have seen such hope with people who are just self-learning, and they know.
Mm-hmm.
They know what's going on. So I think there's hope, and so many people are waking up, and it just takes the freedom to be able to come on shows like this and, just speak out and organize together online in any way that we can to say, you know what, we're rising up. We're not going to take this anymore. We're all awake. And
absolutely. Yeah, you can't stop knowledge from transcending. There's, you just can't put the brakes on it. It's interesting. A lot of people are on the fast track. I agree with you on that, and I think we can attribute that to the internet on some level, because it is a nice little library when you look at it from that perspective. And also the idea of independent research, I think, is phenomenal opposed to mainstream schools, because people are learning more outside the school system than inside. Even in colleges, they're learning more by doing their own research independently versus what they've been programmed to learn through any college curriculum.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you go to I know a couple of archaeologists who, they've written textbooks, and then their buddies are like, oh yeah, I'll use your textbook in my class. And it's just sort of a, when you first go into it, maybe there's some people who think a lot more innocently. At least that's how I was. I was pretty naive in thinking that textbooks were so fact-filled and that they were written by, I don't know, groups of people and a consensus. And while some of them are, there's also just little, crony favors going on where who knows what we're reading and who knows what we're being told. And not every textbook is a good textbook, but we just have to question everything. So, and there are so many free resources now online for people to become educated. I am just a huge fan of these MOOCs, these massive online, I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but they're massive online open courses that, and you can go and you can take Ivy League level classes for free. And assuming you have the time, you can get in there and just learn so much without the expectation of grades and different things. And of course, if you don't learn anything, you can at least learn what they're trying to push onto people. So it's good all around. So there's so much thanks to the internet.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. It is nice. Yep, absolutely. And last we chatted, you had some kind of a think tank going on, didn't you? Start a think tank of some kind. Did that never take off? Or
you know what? That's STAR, the Society for Truth and Archaeological Research. And I came into a little roadblock with that, actually. It's still going. We're reorganizing. I've had to let go, of some people, and then the board reorganized, and so we're trying to get it together and off and running again. But we were sidetracked, and this is, I'm going to just be frank here, we were sidetracked due to some group of individuals in the industry who liked the idea and got in and sort of infiltrated, and then took trade secrets, if you will. Not that there were many trade secrets, but they sort of went in, infiltrated, took what they could, and ran with it, making a for-profit venture. And they took the whole business model and everything and made it for profit, and basically cheapened it. And
oh no,
it was really sad to see, because they just took everything and just turned it into some, bastardized version of itself, if I can say that on air.
Oh, yeah.
But it was pretty awful. And like I said, it's a group of people that are very well known. One in particular, I'm just not going to name, but I mean, if anybody's that curious, they can email me and I'll tell them the whole story. But I'm not the
dirt. Okay.
I'm not going to, but I'm not going to do that to somebody, on air. I'm not going to be sour grapes or be disrespectful that way. But, rather than worry about it or try to do anything about it or enforce any sort of non-compete clause, we just decided to reorganize and refocus and do something even better and make sure that it's 100% free and open to the public and not for profit, so that we can get that information out there and we can bring together like minds. I have so many independent researchers contact me just with all this amazing information that I can't even begin to do anything with. And I want to help everybody, but I sometimes see that whereas one person has this information, another person has that, but they happen to be, miles and miles away from each other. So it's just very important, I think, to get everybody together so we can all support each other and get that truth out there. So it's not dead. It's just been sort of Yeah, it went through a little tailspin and it's having to be reorganized and come back stronger than ever. And I will be posting more about that in the coming weeks too,
Right.
as we revamp the website and offer more services. And again, if anybody wants to email me and put in their 2 cents as to what those things should be, I know a lot of people have given me some great ideas for what they'd like to see. Something that I really wanted to do. My main goal for STAR was to get independent researchers in more of an alternative realm together with open-minded, university-backed researchers, and then even just people who are curious or have something interesting they want to say, but basically make a community of people who are like-minded and can share this information and do something with it, and perhaps crowdsource some excavations, do something to where we can get out there and look into some of these ancient mysteries that, that we can write all day, but if we're not able to go there and excavate and, really get more data and then put that out, I mean, we're just going to keep on the gerbil wheel and pedaling and pedaling and pedaling. And so I really want to make a change. I really want something to come of this. And I believe that it can be done as long as we all cooperate. And I am 100% confident that that can be achieved. And I also hope to provide free learning tools and different things for everybody. So lots of fun stuff going on, but we've had to take a step back and reorganize the whole thing. But
Yep. Well, I would keep it undercover for a while. If you're reorganizing, I wouldn't give your information out until you're ready to just unroll it, roll it out. You know what I mean? Just don't let people try to clone it. So I would just keep it kind of quiet until you're ready to roll. That's what I would do anyway.
No, you're right, and that's something, unfortunately, that I need to. I kind of go into things with wearing my heart on my sleeve, thinking that everybody's.
I used to do that too.
I've learned now that people really do just want to make money, and not that there's anything wrong with that. People need to make money, and I definitely would like to make money, and everybody needs money. Blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, we need to do something that matters. Yeah. So it can't all just be about money making, because that's what's gotten us into this trouble, is the greed, the incessant greed that we all have. So,
Correct. With that, yeah, I agree.
Corruption.
It's more like we need unity consciousness, and I totally agree with you on that. And I think that getting everybody together, because people are all scattered everywhere. I mean, I just had this conversation last week with my guest, Grant, and it's the same thing. We have people that have really incredible information, but literally need to be unified. There needs to be some kind of a unified collective, if you will. And so I think that's very, very important. And as we get together on radio and we talk about this and we do interviews and this and that, we still have to correlate everything. And I think that your idea is really important. And I think that it needs to be done without a doubt. A lot of people have pieces to the puzzle.
They do, and they don't know where to put those pieces. They don't have all the connections. They don't have the information that maybe somebody else does. And, we have to support the independent researchers. We have to support the people that are really doing the hard work and taking the blows to get the information out that we need. And so it's something that we all need to do and we need to get behind these people 100%, even if we do not agree with what they're saying. Everybody, I've been to so many conferences and spoken with people who, they come, the audience members and different people, they have all these interests, and some of them, will come and see a speaker and they don't agree with that speaker. They maybe came to see someone else who they do agree with. But what I've noticed is at the end of it all, when people are just socializing, there's such a huge respect level. People can listen to other ideas, but not have to discredit everyone and just be so taking it personally and just being so angry about it all and wanting to make people look bad or level people. I think it's important that we all just get together and not attack each other from within. We don't need to implode. We need to get together regardless of our personal beliefs on, certain things. That doesn't mean we have to endorse all those ideas, but we need to be open to them because it's the creative process. We're all trying to look at these things creatively. And things like archaeology, while it is science, it is a social science. And history, archaeology, they came out of humanities and liberal arts. So it is not technically a hard science. So there is an acceptable and expected level of inference and speculation that needs to come into the practice in order for us to piece together all those data points from the past. We can't do it through just, beakers and measurements. And however, it's a science, and that there's there's definite research methods and things we need to adhere to, and we definitely use technical approaches that are highly scientific. But at the end of the day, we don't have all the pieces. We can't go back in time and observe the past, so it's not observable. So we have to introduce a level of interpretation to this, and so
and it becomes very esoteric after a while. I mean, after a while, the information kind of morphs. It takes on an energy of its own. And when you're dealing with old ancient history in general, I mean, it's really like time traveling in the illusion of. I mean, you're going backwards into another timeline to see what was going on back there, and that's very complex when you look at it.
Yeah,
it's really fascinating. I agree. I would suggest everybody leave their ego at the door when they go to those conventions and just kind of go in there and be neutral and just embrace information.
Right, absolutely. Thankfully, most of the crowds I've ever seen have been that way, and it's just a nice place to be, around people with like minds who are willing to hear each other out. But, we just need more of that. We need to have a community, and thankfully, there's the internet and at least for now.
Right. Yeah. Until they flip the switch, right?
Right. So, but we're coming along, and I think we're hitting, or at least we're approaching critical mass here. Imagine just 20 years ago, how many people knew about any of these authors? I mean, there might have been a handful, thanks to maybe some, late night radio or, books that have obviously come out, but there is such a larger acceptance and interest in this information. And that's, to me, very exciting. Even those people who are doing it or engaging in it only for entertainment, at least they're getting exposed to this. Mm-hmm. At least they're taking a step forward. And I believe that after a while, it's just going to click in their minds. So, if it takes entertainment, call it edutainment, and just, at least they're doing something. But I think that we're waking up. Mm-hmm. But and then I get the emails about my Ebola Sumerian connection that are like, before they've even read it, this is crazy garbage. What are you talking about? I'm like, oh, maybe we're not as evolved as I was hoping.
I know. There's always a few in the crowd, though, I swear. Just block them.
Oh, yeah. I let everyone say what they will, unless they start getting really nasty to any of my followers or, myself. Then I'm not going to tolerate that kind of stuff because that's just unacceptable.
Yeah, it's negative. You don't need to deal with that.
Absolutely.
It's almost laughable on some weird way. It's kind of like animated, just keep seeing cartoons when you talk about that stuff. But they're always hiding in the background. How many seconds was it before, when you heard from these people? You just put it out there and then they show up.
It was so quick, yeah.
Waiting
So I thought that was interesting. So I thought, well, this should be fun, and I got to get this information out because, like I said, it was kind of interesting to first come across that information about the medical tablets and the information they held about the fevers, and they were so specific. But what I found to be extraordinarily interesting was the mythology that surrounded it, because it wasn't like they didn't say, well, they got it from this virus or this. Or they actually had a mythos wrapped around it that. Is quite symbolic and interesting and something that, I really think should be out there.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, there's definitely a correlation with that one for sure. So what is your impression of Ebola today? I mean, the illusion of, I see it as kind of a false flag. One day you hear about it, the next minute you don't, and then it just goes into wherever. It gets vaporized somewhere.
Yeah, isn't that funny? It's just one day people are freaking out. Schools. I know where I am. I'm just outside of Cleveland, so we had the nurse come through Akron, and that caused a stir. Most of the schools around me closed. And we had days where there were school closings. I know there was a dress shop that closed. There were all kinds of things just closing. I think a couple cities closed, like actual jurisdictions just closed. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, it's really hitting the fan, isn't it? And I'm looking at this like this is a real knee-jerk reaction. It just wasn't a good feeling because when people do that, that's how we get things like the Patriot Act, just scare them and then boom, we don't think. We just go right into signing our liberties away. So, it started to just boom out of nowhere, and then it just died down a little bit. And then where was it in the news? And it's just sort of, there's a lot of weird things with that too. Mm-hmm. So
I agree. It doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up. And I would venture to say maybe initially that, well, could it have been created somehow. I know they were working on that kind of thing in labs. So I would have leaned more towards that had it not been for then the research that I just did to say, well, it did. We have a good idea of it existing long ago. But again, the idea that it existed long ago and it would be in its same, form is highly unlikely. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why are they researching this? Like you said, what's going on? And so, I was looking into that a little further, and I found that, wow, we're sitting on pretty much a disaster waiting to happen in terms of paleoepidemiologists going after some kind of Jurassic Park of disease. They need to watch what they're doing because they're going to unleash something maybe they didn't intend on unleashing.
Right. Well, it's kind of known that anything natural, whether it's a plague, virus, whatever, has been mutated to some degree and, of course, weaponized. And we have patents to prove that. So a lot of what we're seeing, I mean, even with history and the ancients, whatever they had going on with whatever illness, nowadays you can weaponize it and create it and synthesize it to a point where it becomes extremely, it's worse than it could ever have been back then. I mean, literally you're dealing with weaponization of every type of virus available. So anything can be weaponized, in my opinion. And I know we have access to doing that. And so that's my take anyways, that they're deploying it when they want to. I think that this was a test run. My own impression of this false flag, what I call a false flag with the Ebola, it just seems like a test run for something else. And it does indicate, I think he signed off on a few things that would indicate a quarantine of some kind for people in the United States, not necessarily people coming in from outside, but people here. So once again, you're seeing an agenda unfold before your eyes, but at the same time, as we have communicated, so many people are awakened to this that it's not going to fly the way they want it to. I mean, too many people are onto it. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. And they've been looking for these things on purpose in some ways, and in some ways they're just stumbling upon some of these ancient viruses. I know just last week they came across a 700-year-old virus. They found it in ancient caribou feces, and the virus was revived and it started infecting living plants. So, the scientists were trying to revive it. So it's just a little, what are they doing? They replicated the virus in the Canadian caribou feces at the Blood Systems Research Institute in San Francisco.
Wow.
So
it's a Frankenvirus.
I know. They said they wanted to do it to learn.
Right. At whose expense? That's the problem. I don't have a problem with this type of thing, but everybody has to pay the price for that at some point in the continuum, That's the problem I have. It always becomes some kind of a military thing after a while.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that makes me wonder a lot. Like, what are they doing when they hide some of these archaeological, research expeditions? Are they, particularly because a lot of them that I have seen have now been bringing with them these types of people, the paleoepidemiologist or the paleobotanist, or just people who could have something to do with it all, who could be able to interpret this. And I know a lot of them are saying it's because of looking into climate change. That's a big trend right now in archaeology, is getting these people together to go out and look at, how the environment was at a particular point in order to study climate change. But in my opinion, they're just trying to prove climate change that way. So they're going out and they're doing that, and they inevitably run across the question of then how does climate change interact with viruses, ancient viruses, because that's something that they had spoken about for a long time with regards to the Black Death. They thought that, it was just carried on fleas, and, it just spread that way. There was a lot of misunderstandings of how that went, but they now think that it was because of deforestation, and that caused a climate change in like a microclimate, and then it sort of like spiraled from there. So there's this big emphasis on climate change and disease and how they're working hand in hand. And so it brings me back to the Sumerian controversy and Land of the Watchers, where I came across the fact that they were also stating that their goal was not to find anything in particular. They wanted to find information. And they went on to say they were looking at climate issues, and they had a climatologist come with them on the second outing. And so they're looking at different things like the grains and the climate and whatever. So Who
Interesting.
knows? It is strange. I
Well,
don't.
when you think about it, why aren't they looking at the chemtrails if they're so interested in climate change? That's part of it. Oh no, we can't talk about that, right?
Oh no.
Yeah, really. But that has a lot to do with some of the problems we've been having, especially with the trees, in my opinion. So,
Absolutely. And I think it has to do with obviously it has to do with control.
mhm.
And I think that part of that control is very much alive today as it was in the ancient days. So, in these ancient texts that potentially speak of Ebola, they attribute this disease to the Sabiti. The Sabiti, or that meant seven, so it was the seven.
Mm.
They were evil entities which were half human and half divine, and they were considered to be messengers of the Lord Anu. And strangely, they could only be seen at night. And it's been described that they whirled about in the base of heaven, circling furiously in front of the crescent moon.
Mm.
So they're hybrid beings. They were created by the union between Era, which is Negral in Sumer, and the Earth. And the intent was that Era, who was a war god, the intent was that he could use the seven as weapons against humanity.
Mm.
So,
Interesting.
yeah,
It's fascinating.
So, yeah, it's quite interesting when you look at it. They reference almost just plain out racism too. They say they want to limit the growth of human population, particularly those of the black-haired people. Which was who Anu wanted to, quote, annihilate.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
wild. So how did the Sumerians define the moon?
How do they define the moon?
Is there any information on that, how they would define the moon?
As in how they would define it?
Well, as in celestial bodies or anything there? I mean, did they ever mention it? Was there a lot of emphasis on it?
There was, and they absolutely they had gods who were associated with the moon. And it was definitely that the whole celestialization of gods was a very important thing altogether. But the sun and definitely the moon. So they absolutely had a working knowledge of it, but also a sort of deified view of it.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'm always curious about that. When I look back, I saw an article not too long ago about they were talking about the moon itself and how the moon arrived after the Earth was formed in the illusion of, right? But it was interesting, it's because it reminds me of not an asteroid, it reminds me of an artificial design and under intelligent control. That's the way I perceive it anyway. So I was curious insofar as if there was a record of the way it navigated or any type of extraterrestrial associated with it. But you mentioned that the gods were also associated with the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, they were. And then, it's interesting because the Era, that particular god, his name, and of course, some of this could be contested by some, but the mainstream idea of the etymology of the name sort of references copper and building and large strength and all these different things that are really interesting. And on the tablets, it spoke of this mighty Era who could move great rocks that nobody else could, and who chews hard copper like it would be leather, and who forges tools. He and the seven actually go to the top of a mountain, and in a flash of fiery light, they raise it off the ground and go up into the heavens near the moon.
Wow, it sounds like a craft.
It is weird, isn't it?
It's fascinating. I love hearing about this. This is so cool. We're going to take a break pretty soon, but when we get back, I do want to talk a little bit about these gods. Now, did they define them as being giants?
Some.
Okay.
Not all.
Okay. So, that's interesting. Yeah, because once again, I'm looking at the correlation between the giants, quote unquote giants, versus the Sumerian texts and some of the information associated with that, with their version of a god and what that entailed. I think that's very fascinating. Very cool.
They had a lot of different definitions and a lot of godlike entities as well. And some were, hybrid beings, and some were special demons, and not they had a huge amount of diversity and variety in their deity. So it is quite interesting.
Well, what's interesting is if it's all written in a kind of metaphor and symbolism, then you have to transcend everything you're looking at, and you can't really go by it literally. You have to look at it from a different perspective, on a more intuitive, multidimensional perspective, I would say. So not everything as it appears in text.
Sure.
Even though it can really set your mind in motion. I mean, insofar as imagination goes, boy, we can take it to any level. Just understanding what they're talking about is fascinating. To me, it's like a cool sci-fi.
Sure. And you know what is another problem? It definitely need to look at the metaphor of these things, the symbolism, but also there's a danger at looking at things too metaphorically, because I know in the instance of the statues at Easter Island, forever the local myth was, how did these get here? Well, they just simply walked, and they walked up this road, and it was like, okay, whatever. So, but more recently, experimental archaeology has been conducted that would almost prove that that's exactly what happened. They tied giant ropes on the statue. They actually I think Nova actually did a special on this, which is quite interesting.
That.
Yeah. So they proved that, at least by their measurements, that they were able to kind of walk these statues up these particular roads, proving that the ancients literally said, yeah, they just walked into place. Now, there were more details at hand, that they didn't like get up by themselves and just walk through magic, but still it's not to completely discredit. There are grains of truth, even literal truth potentially, in what the ancients had to say. So it's really a difficult job to wade through all that and determine what was literal and what was not.
Totally. And with that being said, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Everybody stay tuned. Dark Matter Radio Network. Welcome back, everybody, to Dark Matter Radio Network. This is Hyperspace. I'm Solaris BlueRaven, and I'm here with my very special guest, Dr. Heather Lynn. Heather, you with me?
Yes.
All right. Yes, fascinating conversation. I'm so glad you came onto the show tonight. I really appreciate you being here. It's awesome.
Oh, no, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Yeah, anytime. We all love you over here. Once again, we have, well, we're not going to talk about it, but yes, there's a specific group that we really enjoy having over here. You're on the list.
Well, that's good to know.
Yes, it is. So insofar as the plagues go, I'm kind of curious. Is there a correlation between curses and plagues, and how, if they, at all, do they tie in with regarding ancient sites and burials? Have you noticed anything like that?
Actually, maybe not specifically, because plagues have such a long history, but so do curses. Sometimes they have been conflated, but I think that things like the Pharaoh's curse, I think a lot of those have been shown recently to be when archaeologists in the past have gone in and opened things that they shouldn't have, or, exposed themselves to biohazards that then would cause them medical problems and potentially death. And so it would be looked at as a curse, when really it was a kind of like a viral contaminant or some kind of a biohazard. But, in terms of plagues, obviously, plagues, wow. I mean, what can we say about plagues? They're referenced in the Bible. They're referenced everywhere. And it's from the Latin plaga, meaning to blow. So the word plague has been associated with a blow, like mostly with the wind. And that's been for over 4,000 years. So the idea of a plague blowing in on the wind, I don't know how that would really necessarily lead to a curse, but you could call a plague a curse.
Right, I would think they would associate the plague as a curse, maybe.
Like punishment, perhaps, from the
superstitious.
The gods. Absolutely. So, yeah, you had at the time, that was in Sumer and Babylon and all of Mesopotamia, it was a common theme, this fear of plagues. They had so many different ones. And then they had gods who actually, Era was not only a god of war, but he was also the god of plagues, one of the many gods of plagues. So, he was known to bring pestilence onto people, and he used the seven to accomplish that, which is interesting. So,
Yeah, it's fascinating. I remember in the old days they used to talk about the grave robbers, and I think they used to use four thieves oil or something like that to assist them in being able to rob the graves so that they wouldn't get any type of a plague or get infected.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. I think it was four thieves oil, wasn't it, or was it something else?
No, I think it was four thieves oil.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you think about it. There's always a way around some of that stuff, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
The bold.
When you want something, I guess you go to any lengths.
It's really interesting. Well, they improvise and they just knew what to do intuitively speaking, I would suspect. When you think about it, that's really fascinating. So, in your journeys of what you're researching, what is the most intriguing site or ancient area that you are really pulled towards on an intuitive level?
Oh, wow. On an intuitive level. Oh, there's so many. This is such an exciting time. There's some that, some that might sound a bit cliche, but I think we all have an interest in Stonehenge, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for Stonehenge, perhaps I wouldn't even be in this field. As a child, I read all of those mysteries of the unknown from Time Life books and, looked at the Stonehenge they always used as sort of the symbol of it all. So I looked into Stonehenge and it's quite interesting. It's actually more interesting in more recent years since they have found so many sites that are in particular distances away, and they found a lot of different things to make the site itself a lot more interesting. So, I have an interest in Stonehenge on that level, maybe nostalgia, but really there's so many. It's just really hard to just decide. Göbekli Tepe, of course, is an amazingly interesting site, as is Çatalhöyük, which I think gets less attention than Göbekli Tepe, and I think Çatalhöyük was one of the first that I learned about in school that really hooked me. Like, wow, look at this. Look how advanced they were and how interesting that is. And so, but always, I'm drawn to the Middle East, it seems. I do have an interest in sites all over the place. So I don't think there's really one that sticks out to me. There's so many that are interesting. In fact, I find that a lot of them are kind of connected to one another.
Right.
So,
It seems that way. It's almost like a star map superimposed onto the Earth, if you will. Yeah, it's something like that. I would think so anyway. But have you done a lot of research with the stargates and the portals associated with these ancient sites and areas?
Not a lot. I've only been recently sort of dipping into that. I've been interested in it, and I do accept a lot of it. But some of my friends, Gary David writes on the Orion theory and some different things like that. And so I've been, I've talked to him and been interested in his work. I find it to be very interesting, and others like that. I look at it, but I've not really put my foot down and said, "Oh, here it is." I do include some in, books and research that I've done. Articles. I include different constellation kind of anomalies or star maps and things. So it comes up very frequently. So it's not something that I can really look away from, but it's also not something that I've put my all into. But man, I have to say, they knew so much. I just am amazed at how much science, if you will, the ancients knew, but particularly astronomy. They were very in tune with the sky.
Absolutely.
Very much.
Yeah, well, they didn't have the interference we have today. I mean, we have interference from satellites, man-made satellites, and all sorts of things that are going, which are man-made, obviously. So they didn't have all that space junk,
Oh, sure.
And I think that makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. Light pollution alone. I mean, I'm grateful to live in the country now where I can look out and see a very beautiful sky. But before I lived in the city, and I used to live in Los Angeles years ago, and talk about light pollution and every kind of pollution. You could never really, see a beautiful sight. So
yeah, it makes a huge difference. And also the connection on an intuitive level, it's like night and day when you tune into the hemispheres of the full light universe. And I can get real esoteric on it, but I can see how they I can see how they constructed these sites in alignment with these star systems and these celestial races, if you will. And absolutely. I find it fascinating. And that's the key I think people have missing. They're missing that sacred heritage, the key to our ancient ancestry, which is critical actually at this point in the timeline. And if you ask me, I think that it's very important that we understand who we are, where we come from, and where we come from isn't really what we've been taught. So that has a lot to do with it.
And it's amazing because we spend a lot of time looking at the science behind it, which is, important and good.
Mm-hmm.
And we look at even the astronomy aspect of it, which is another science, which is important and good. And we try to look at what tangible things we can identify that can prove this or prove that. But something that sometimes I think goes researched or not spoken about as much as maybe it could be is that there was a spiritual shift that occurred and that is traceable. We can go back. It's almost like you've heard of people say the big brain bang, like there was something that happened in human minds that made them start settling and doing things. So having these types of worship centers. And I recently wrote about such a thing in one of my blog posts. I talked about a really interesting rock that was found. It was supposed to be, well, according to the researchers at the University of Oslo, it was a rock that acted as a temple that would have dated back 30,000 years ago, earlier than any of the other findings in Europe at the time. And so this is in Europe, so it's quite fascinating. I don't know if you're familiar with the Python Rock in northwestern Botswana, but
no,
it's until the discovery, archaeologists believe that the man's first religious rituals were practiced over 40,000 years ago in Europe. But some of the researchers at Oslo University found that there was something definitely older, and it just hadn't been researched fully. And so she went and did a little research and found this particular rock. And it's now, the whole area is known as a UNESCO World Heritage Site because it has the largest concentration of rock paintings in the world. So it's already a really important site. And it's sacred to the local people there, the indigenous people. They call these hills the mountains of the gods. It's always, all the mountains are often associated with gods. So, they still think they think of the python as one of their most sacred animals. And according to their creation myth, man descended from a python in the sky. And the stream beds around the hills of the area, they believe they were created by the python as it circled the hill looking for water. So they thought that as it went around and around these hills, it sort of burrowed ditches and made these streams that would collect the rainwater. So so
that sounds like a ship once again. Sounds like a craft of some kind to me.
Yeah. So, and then it would go around and around and make enough of an indentation that it would eventually create streams and then go up into the air. And so it is quite interesting. And so that now, they even have to get permission by the python god to go up there. And probably because reaching the particular cave system is not easy. It's very difficult terrain and it's very secluded. So it wasn't even discovered until the 90s. So, but there are rock paintings and all kinds of interesting things. But the biggest draw is that python, of course. It is a rock that looks like a big snake. It measures 6 meters in length and 2 meters high. And what's really cool is that it has indentations that are man-made, and they look systematically, carved into place. There's many of them too. And when the sunlight glistens on those indentations, it gives the appearance of snake skin. And at night, if there's fire, which they have found evidence of fire, so they can see where the firelight would have bounced, it would have flickered on those scales of the python, and it would have looked as though the snake was undulating through the darkness. So that was pretty advanced for that. That's advanced thinking for, over 70,000 years ago.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they knew that. What was interesting too is it was not a place where anybody lived. There was no evidence of any kind of camp. They dug a test pit in front of the Python stone, and there they found a number of stones that they thought they used to actually make the indentations. And along with those tools, they found other tools that dated at least 70,000 years ago. And the weird thing about it, they were among thousands of artifacts, but the weirdest thing about it was that the spearheads were made from material that wasn't native to the region, but it came from areas much farther away. So they were really special. And, they varied in color. They were, as far as rock could be, they were very vivid in color. Mm-hmm. So, and they weren't like any other spearhead that anyone knew of being manufactured in that time in that area. So they found that only the red colored spearheads had been burned. So they thought that perhaps the early inhabitants of the area, maybe took the colored spearheads into the cave and then would finish carving them. At that point, they would do a ritual burning of the red one. And so given the absence of any other artifact at the site, they are pretty convinced that people made pilgrimages to do these types of, ceremonial things with these spearheads. Mm-hmm. And so it's really interesting, and it all really points to the idea that early humans were capable of abstract thinking at a much earlier point than previously accepted.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, you have to ask what happened to these quote-unquote gods. Where are they? What happened to them? Where's the, there has to be some kind of a remnant, you would say. And then, of course, you said they associate the mountains with gods. So is that a burial site for them or some sort of a who knows what?
Right. And, it's funny, too, because, again, as it always comes down to control in this way, mm-hmm. I find it interesting that behind the rock, there's a secret chamber, or what could be viewed as a secret chamber. And the archaeologists believe that it would have been accessible only by a shaman. And he would have been able to really hide, but he had a good vantage point as well. So it was sort of up and, behind. So he could hide in the darkness and then peer out at the people coming and going around him. And with the sounds of the voice that he could make echoing out of there, it would have sounded as though the python was talking. So,
wow. Talk about snake oil. Wait a minute here.
Right.
That's great.
If you could imagine just being an early human ancestor approaching that summit after a long journey, and you catch a glint of light off of what looks like a big snake, you're going to be afraid. And then when you get up there, maybe they were bringing the spearheads up there to be blessed so that they could have good luck in the hunt, or maybe they were looking for healing, because snakes have often been seen as a healing type of a symbol. So maybe they were looking for healing as well. But, here they would be standing in front of this giant serpent, unlike anything they had probably ever seen before. And then a low, cavernous voice would just bellow out. And so, it might be that you're in a highly suggestible state. And
right. What about psychedelics? Was that integrated?
Well, yeah, who knows? They could have brought anything up there with them, and there was definitely fire that happened. So they could have sat around a fire, and who knows what could have happened there. And I guess we'll really never know. But what was interesting is if you were a really smart guy and you had some suspicion that snake wasn't actually talking, you could get brave and go directly into it, and you wouldn't have found the shaman, because there was also a chamber by way of a small shaft leading out onto the hillside. So he would have got away. Wow. And you'd have been tricked. It's very advanced. Just the idea of that being such a site that is so old that people, the early people at that time, they would have been, very advanced to just think of this. It also reminds me of some of the old Christian churches in Europe, where pilgrims would also go to those sites because they would hear of these wondrous things that happened in these, big cathedrals and sometimes little churches, of course, these very small. Everybody had to have something, a relic, something to draw out the pilgrims. So they made money this way. It was like tourism. So you'd have a pilgrimage, and there are many churches that have been found to have little escape doors, actually some are highly complex systems of pulleys and chains and stuff, where the friar would be in the back and the pilgrims would come up to the front, and they would put in their offering. And if it wasn't enough, the friar could pull a string and make Jesus, look down at them disapprovingly and scare scare the daylights out of them. And they could put in another coin, and then, there could be they had a whole system of marionettes and different things in the back. And some of those churches, those are still available to tour today. So it's sort of a kind of a common idea, maybe, that, you have something that that is amazing. It makes people want to travel to it for spiritual reasons. And you go there and you have an offering and you're getting swindled while you're
Wild.
there.
Yeah, no kidding. You think that would have been something more current, but I guess even back then they had their own version of theater and folklore and superstition and game playing. Huh.
Right. Yeah.
That's wild.
It's pretty wild. They could have possibly done that even with a shaman and a rock. So it doesn't take much to, be a shyster, I guess.
It's not. That's almost sad in a way, because you want to look at these sites like, oh, they're really magical and powerful and ancient. And maybe it was just something as simple as that, like a theater.
Yeah, you'd hate to think that, but, and of course, people need to continue the research and see, but that takes money and effort, and I don't think they're really going back there to look for anything else. So,
well, where does all the funding go? I mean, who actually is responsible for funding people independently? Do you get funded at all or no?
I get no funding.
That's too bad.
No, I get nothing. So I am, but that's why I'm a renegade. I went out of that. I could have been funded. I could have sold my soul and just done whatever I was told to do, and I didn't want to do that, because when you do that, you have to explore the research questions of whoever is paying you. Mm-hmm. So it really comes down. I got into that early. I found that we'd have these casual conversations over lunch or even at an excavation site, like, oh, what got you involved and what are you interested in and what do you want to do? And then I would say something like, I like Mesopotamian mythology, or I like comparative religion, and you get the belly laugh. Oh, yeah, we did too. I wanted to be an Egyptologist. I wanted to be you'd hear these sad stories, these old guys, they say, but you will learn after a while that really all like, wow, that's such a jaded outlook on things. So I didn't really want to go down that path, but really what that path is the financially secure and acceptable path. So not that it's that secure. Let me tell you, archaeologists, they don't really make a lot of money at all, but they barely make a livable wage, but some of them do. But a lot of the people that do the brunt of the work, the shovel bums as they're known, I think they can, they're lucky to get $30,000 a year, and it's just really rough work too. So not a good career choice in a traditional sense. But you really have to have a passion behind what you're doing, which is really sad, because if you come in with that passion and then you're told, hey, you might want to leave that at the door, because what you're really here to do is try to drum up some grant money to just kind of keep yourself in a job and push some papers and do the status quo. That's disappointing. So.
It is. Yeah, it's like keep your nose to the ground, don't ask questions, and you'll get your paycheck. I don't get that. I really don't. That's what the problem we have right now, is because there's been so much censorship and editing, and everything has been misdirected and controlled to such a degree. So I do respect the independent research, without a doubt. There's something to be said about that. You get more information for sure.
The funding though, I mean, to directly answer your question, the funding for archaeology research really does come from a number of sources, primarily grants. Mm-hmm. I have to say that, if you're in a university, the university, you'll be funded in the sense that if you teach some classes, you'll get a paycheck, and, they'll fund maybe a lab or some area for you. And it depends on the college. Some have a small program, some have a large program, but for the most part, it's all grant oriented, especially if you want to go out and actually, do something on a project. You have to have grant money to do that. And so it's always about grants. And, when you go after grants, you're going after a lot of times the government. And foundational grants, those are good too, and you can get a lot of money with that. But who has the money to have a foundation other than what? Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? They actually sponsor some archaeological excavations. Who do you want to sell your soul to them? Those are the questions that you're pretty much. Those are pretty much the realities of it. I know that when I worked in the research center that I did, I referenced Bill and Melinda Gates by design. That was actually one of the funders, and they didn't give us $1 million or anything, but they definitely sent over, 5,000, I think it was. I mean, that's small, but I mean, that's the college I was at was a small community college. So, I mean, that's actually, if you think about it, if they're doing that through community colleges everywhere, just nickel and diming it, I mean, they have their hand in everything. So there's grants, and then there's, the larger companies, as I talk about in Sumerian controversy, the backers of that particular excavation near the city of Ur, those backers were big oil and big banks and an individually wealthy person, someone who came from, an elite bloodline who had access to a huge fortune. So it can be, anybody that does that. So you got to have a lot of money to be able to pay for those things. But what I would like to see happen, I would like to wield the power of the internet and communication while we still can. And I would like to see crowdsourcing of these things, because it does cost a good amount of money to do the research, but it doesn't cost as much money to go out there and at least survey the site and take some samples and build a case for yourself, so that maybe you could bring that case to an organization that does have the money, maybe a more legitimate foundation if you can find one, maybe something that is university backed, something where you could get more support, or even just crowdsourcing in general. I mean, there was a guy, I think it was Kickstarter, I'm not real sure, one of these things. He had some joke he put on there talking about a potato salad recipe. And he earned, it's ridiculous. If you Google potato salad recipe and Kickstarter or one of these things, it is just an unbelievable story. He made a joke. I will make the best potato salad ever. He raised a ton of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was insane because people just thought it was funny and they donated a little bit. And I'm thinking, you know what? Imagine if we just had a tiny bit in order to go fund some of these people. I know I have a gentleman, Sam Sumner. He is convinced that he has found the lost colony of Roanoke, Virginia. And from all that I can see, he has found that colony. And I've been trying to help him as much as I can, and I'm continuing to help him. Of course, neither of us have money. We're funding this out of our own pocket. He has for years, and it's just been his life's mission. And he's had mainline universities back him on this, but individuals from there who subsequently passed away. Times are changing. One of the biggest things that has gotten in his way of getting this information out has actually been the local government's Department of Tourism of Roanoke, because they don't want that mystery solved, or else they think people won't come to Roanoke, Virginia. So, I mean, he has so much to go through. And that's one of the reasons I developed STAR, was to say, people like this need our support. We need to get together. And if people say, I'm going to donate $1 to this, if you get enough people, that's enough to get the equipment, the ground penetrating radar, all the stuff to get out there and do something. That's all it takes.
Absolutely.
So
I agree with you on that one. It's too bad they put the brakes on them, Actually, I think it would bring in tourism.
That's what I would think, but I'm sure it's just an old guard of people who they don't want to change. They don't want to do anything any differently. So I told him that. I said, you need to bring up to them the whole Point Pleasant, where the Mothman thing supposedly went down. I said that they fought that for a while. They didn't want to have an association with such a horrible kind of, story and some kind of monster. But then after a while, they adopted it. Now they have a Mothman festival. It's bringing in like tons of people every year. They're making money. They erect a Mothman monument in their square or wherever. So but it was in their best interest to just go ahead and embrace these things and embrace the people, and you'll get more money that way.
Totally.
But nobody wants to change. People are afraid of new ideas.
Well, they are. That's the problem. Everybody's kind of, there's that inertia that goes on with people and moving forward, I guess. But yeah, I'm the explorer, though. I like to dive in and go in there and get stuff. So how many private investors do you feel have acquired ancient artifacts from civilizations lost? I mean, when you look and see what the world museums have to offer the regular masses, and then you realize that there are, private investors that have actually purchased certain artifacts, do you get that vibe?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I would venture to say that globally, their artifacts are in more private hands than public. I would stand by that, and that's quite a shame.
Yes,
so and that can vary from people who have found these things in their own backyard and kept them. But more often than not, what it really is just black market dealings and very wealthy art collectors. And I mean, if you think about it, like I kind of illustrated in the Sumerian controversy, if you're a wealthy elite power family and you just want to collect all these things, you don't have to do a whole lot to hide it. You don't have to go on the black market. You can save yourself that. It's just cheaper to hire yourself a university.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they do. They go to a university and they say, here is your grant. Go find these things and research this and make a report and whatever. But of course, who's going to have first dibs on those?
Right. That's the problem.
Yeah. So we don't know what they have. They come out of some of these great excavations and they say, well, we found some pottery shards. It was great. That's it.
Oh, that's so annoying. When I think of places like Dubai, I suspect they have a ton of ancient artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that, who have money to burn, the real super, super wealthy. And that's a shame. It really does a disservice on so many different levels. And of course, Egypt comes to mind when it comes down to anything over there that's been confiscated and hidden from the masses, even though they have their own museums and things like that.
Yeah, I mean it's really terrible when you think about it. Like I said, some of the people who do it, they're farmers that they're trying to make a buck or something. But for the most part, it's corrupt large families that are just collecting. They feel entitled to whatever, and they're basically robbing people of culture. Mm-hmm. And it's prevalent everywhere. And I know according to UNESCO, the African continent has due to all of its looting since pre-colonial times even, it is they have had nothing but looting the whole time. It's just they have robbed that continent blind. So it's a lot of times funded by the lucrative markets that are in the West. Mm-hmm. So you get these people from the West that have the museums are guilty of it too. Let me just say that museums are not, angels in this. Mm-hmm. But currently, the estimates, according to UNESCO, on the African cultural material and the artifacts that are out of Africa, they range from 50 to 90%. Of course, they don't know how much, but their estimates are about 50 to 90%. That means that possibly 90% of all artifacts that they have found out of Africa in the entire continent are not even in Africa now.
Oh, that's shameful.
Yeah.
Wow. So, yeah, that's really sad when you think about it.
And the Dogon, the recently articles were published that said that there are more artifacts and cultural material pertaining to the Dogon in France than anywhere else. That's just blows my mind. Like, so it's really terrible.
Yeah, it truly is. So have you done any research on the ancient bloodline of Christ? Anything esoteric in that area?
Only leisurely. Okay. Nothing hard and academic.
Nothing stands out with that.
Oh, I mean, I think it's really fascinating. I think there's a lot there. I'm a really big fan of some of the work Lynn has done, mm-hmm. and Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and some of those are just quite fascinating. And I'm really into Gnostic texts. Mm-hmm. So when you look at those and you look at some of the more modern research that's been done, there's definitely more to the story than what we know of. So, mm-hmm. News comes out every day saying that, Jesus, I think literally today there was a story that came out that said Jesus had been married to Mary Magdalene and had some kids and things. So I think we're only going to see more of this, but given the sensitivity of the issue and people's reluctance to accept change, I think it's going to be increasingly more difficult to get that information out to the public. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, it could be said that lately we've become more secularized, so perhaps that will enable that information to come out. Mm-hmm. I'm not real sure, but I think it's definitely something we need to be looking into more because, wow, what a fascinating story with such huge implications.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, totally. It totally ties into that. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I've been reading a book about the Templars that's just been kind of blowing my mind at some of the connections that have been made. And nice. I've had a lot of people sending me a lot of different things to look at. And I'm pretty much, buried in books at the moment. I really want to get to all of them. And I'm just so excited.
But, awesome. Yeah. Welcome to my world. I have the same thing going on too. It's like, which book do I pick,
Oh, I know. So I'm trying to work my way through these so that I can really get a good sense of what's going on, because just because I may focus on Mesopotamia, what I've learned is there are huge connections between that and Europe. There are huge connections between that and actually the Templar. Mm-hmm. So, and I found that out. There was a little bit of a hint there when I was researching for Sumerian controversy and Land of the Watchers, when I found that the team in charge of excavating the new site in Iraq, it was either a week or two beforehand, they went to a Templar castle to test their equipment. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And there's pictures of them out there using, just different kinds of devices and measuring and surveying. But they said they were out there just testing it on this particular site. And they were recording levels of radiation at the site. And I thought that was quite interesting. That was the only little snippet that I got. But
very interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And I thought, that's interesting. But I didn't really think a whole lot of it until I started having some more information sent to me. So I've been enlightened a little bit on the Templar truth, especially in association with the, some of the Sumerian tablets and mythology and how it really is all connected. And the more I look at, the more I see that this is all so connected, and it's almost frightening to see the connections.
I agree. It's a similar thread in the fabric, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's very well said. I think the whole idea of East and West and Middle East and, Third World and Developing World, all these labels, I think it further serves to kind of compartmentalize everybody so that we get a sense that, oh, well, I know what they're all about. They're just like this or, whatever. So
yeah, I agree. And the conflict keeps people distracted and, just ridiculous. Yeah, I agree with you on that one. But I think putting all these components together will unite everybody. Once again, unification, when we have an understanding of the bigger scenery behind it all.
Absolutely. I believe that is 100% the thing, when you can unify people under these ideas and get them to see that, no, we're in this together. This is one world. These maps have been drawn by people who don't have your best interest at heart. And not only that, but there are no lines. There's, with the exception of natural topography, maps and areas are pretty much just a figment of our imagination. So we really are unified in a lot of different ways. And as I said earlier, there was an effort by the ancient gods of Sumer to annihilate the black-headed people, the black-haired people. And I think that was such an interesting thing, because it shows that even then there was a sense of us versus them. Mm-hmm. And someone tweeted me a little bit ago and asked, why was it the black-headed people? Could it have been that they were possibly more enlightened or in tune with something? And that's a very interesting observation, because perhaps that's the case. Mm-hmm. We have no real way of knowing, but that would be something I'd be interested in looking into a little further.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, programming creates separation. And, depending on their belief systems, that could have created a separation right there. It still does today. It still creates that problem, that rift. If people could just unite on a highest level, it would be so much more peaceful here on this world, if you ask me. But, say lovey.
Right.
But you do have a metaphysical background. So how do you apply your metaphysical background to the type of investigation and the research that you do?
I apply it in maybe in a hopeful way, if that makes any sense. I have a metaphysical background. I have a background in esoteric research, and I have a lot of interest in that, because to me, there is something bigger to this picture. And I kind of go in to everything that I do with that idea that what I'm looking at is only one piece of the puzzle. It may not even be the right puzzle. It might not even be a piece to the puzzle that I think it is. There's something bigger at play. And I try to look at that. And my personal interest has been, where did we come from? Mm-hmm. What is it that we should be believing? Where are the gods? Where are they now? Are they gone? Are they here? all of this is so interesting to me. The idea that there have been myths and legends and religions and practices for so long, and underneath them all, there seems to be hardcore unifying principles, the monomyth that Joseph Campbell spoke about, to name just the very least. I mean, but there's so many like that. So it's just, to me, it's important to look at that because I'm on a personal spiritual journey. That's I kind of got into this in a selfish way that way. I had an interest in archaeology and I have an interest in all of this, but in the end, it's self-serving because I want to know the truth.
Right, absolutely.
And so I want to know the truth, and the truth that I want to know about is, well, I want to see if there's any truth to any of the metaphysical principles that are out there. So I don't have an easy time accepting things that I don't see or that I can't, grasp, like hold in my hand, or at least understand with a bit of reason or logic. So by coming at things with a very, I guess, hopeful or open spiritual sense, I am looking for evidence, I guess you could say. And not that I'm looking to prove anything. And that's the one thing. I don't have pre-existing beliefs. I don't say, well, I believe that, the Garden of Eden was here and it existed and there was an Adam and there was an Eve and there was this and that. And I'm going to go on, I'm going to find it and we're going to call it like it. I don't have that. I have the belief in something that I don't know. Right. I have the belief in something that I have yet to find, but I'm going to continue to look for until I find it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Well, you need the confirmation without expectation. And I think that's exactly what you're trying to say, in my opinion, anyway. But the soul does navigate to certain destinations, and it sounds to me like your soul is seeking these areas to become more enlightened and remind itself of what's going on the multidimensional level. At least that's the way it seems to me, anyway. Oh, so, yeah. I mean, these sites in general, they activate something inside of us that has been slept away for centuries. And whether it's the DNA or the cells of the memory, there's something about these ancient areas that has a significant frequency that merges us to a different level of consciousness. And at least that's my impression of these areas. And I think that's why there's such an interest in these areas.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like maybe looking at old pictures of ourselves that we didn't remember we were in. Things like you look at something and you say, wow, this is strangely familiar, or I understand this, or I but you weren't there. You're not related to it at all, but there's something there. You feel somehow you can relate to it. And to understand that, you can have a better understanding of yourself. And I think that's, something that resonates with a lot of different people.
Well, and also your ancestors might have been there. Maybe you weren't, but maybe there's a cellular memory at the ancestral level.
Yeah, that's something that I really think is possible. I really believe that there's some kind of a genetic communication that we they've done research to show that the primary subject of dreams of toddlers involve animals and beasts like wolves and bears and snakes and some of those really primordial type figures, and that when they hit a certain age of consciousness, about 4, those dreams aren't really there anymore. Instead, their nightmares are about things that they encounter in their current environment, like monsters under the bed, or a scary movie they saw, or will my mom come back, or what's that shadow, or it starts to become a little more complex in how it is expressed. But initially, there's plenty of research to show that small children have an innate fear of the same things. Where did they get that? And it's so there's a lot of interesting things, and there are people who are out there researching genetic memory, thankfully. So
yeah, exactly. And I'm a firm believer in that also. Yeah, it seems like the children do get polluted by programming after a while. I think that's just an osmosis effect from living in a household, probably. But have you done much research with animals and totems? Speaking of the animal kingdom and dreams?
No, but let me say this. I would love someone to tell me something about that, because I, for a while, was having a crazy dream almost every night about a bear chasing me. And I put it on my Facebook and said, hey,
I think I remember.
I was getting haunted by a bear for like a week, and it was really crazy. So I started thinking about it. But a long time ago, I went out to I traveled all over the country and in search of some of these things at an early age, like, spirituality. So I visited a lot of different temples and churches and people, and I was just on the road, kind of a transient, trying to look for all the answers. Actually, that's when I first experienced late night radio, because I would be on the road driving through the desert and I'd hear all kinds of different topics that were very intriguing. But anyhow, I went out and I met with some Native Americans who started talking to me about totems, and they told me, I don't know how legit this was. Because I don't know enough about it, but I was told that my spirit animal was a red-tailed hawk. And so I thought that was interesting. So, every now and then I when I see a red-tailed hawk, I think, oh, look, it's a red-tailed hawk.
Nice. Well, I'm a firm believer in that. If you have repetitive dreams of certain animals, then I would say they're probably connected to your totem. But I know the bear is symbolic of strength. So,
oh, is it?
Yeah.
It was attacking me, so I don't know how
good
maybe
that
it
was. Means you need, I don't know, unless it was trying to tell you that you need to get stronger, but you seem very strong to me. So.
Well, maybe at the time I wasn't, because I think that was the time that I was going through, some setbacks in terms of health and that. So,
misdiagnosis, you mean?
The misdiagnosis.
Jeez,
and you know what? It all happened at once. I had the misdiagnosis, and then that was also when Star sort of started to become under attack, and it was a lot of stress at the time. And I thought, wow, if they want to get me to stop, this is just the way to do it. But I wasn't going to stop. So
I'm glad you didn't. You're an asset to this world, so you don't want to just vanish out.
Oh no, not at all.
I don't see you doing that anyway.
No, I'm too loud. I have to get out there and say
professionally loud. You have a nice demeanor. You pull it off well.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
And we have about 10 minutes left here, but man, it's been great to have you on tonight, Heather. It's always a pleasure to have you on. We always have a good time.
I know. It's just so great. I'm telling you, we need to go get drinks sometime.
I'm telling you, whenever you're out my way, we keep talking about this, but you live in another state. If I'm ever in Ohio, I will definitely connect with you out there for sure.
Absolutely.
You might be on, I don't know, are you doing any more television or?
Episodes? There's some things I can't really divulge right now. But possibly there's something coming up, documentary wise.
Nice.
So yeah, it's still in the works, still going back and forth on how it can be done logistically due to the due to the region, if you will. Some of the stuff I study is in very war-torn areas. So trying to figure out the logistics of some of that, and the politics behind it as well. So
sure, that's pretty hairy to get through.
Yeah. I found a lot of roadblocks that way, but keep pushing through.
Excellent. You don't get any threats or anything, though, do you?
I do. It's insane.
You do?
Yeah, I still do. I not as much anymore. They come and go. They sort of ebbs and flows, and it's still over this Sumerian controversy, and I just can't wrap my head around
What's their problem?
Yeah, I'm still being told crazy things about that. I don't know who is what or what, but somebody actually sent me a message that said I need to record all of these somehow and do that. So I'm going to take some screen caps or do stuff. I'm not sure what to do with it all other than just keep it. And then someone said I need to report it to the FBI if they get out of hand. And I'm like, well, what are they going to do about it? So I'm sort of looking into it now, like, what should I do with all these? But then they go away. Then they die down. And I'm like,
might want to document, though. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's quite interesting because it's primarily over. I mean, I'll get hate mail about everything. I say one wrong thing, and it's
I
like,
can't believe that, Heather. You're so nice. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's not necessarily personally directed towards me. Just some of the things that I may have said or referenced. But everybody's so great. I get so much mail. It's probably only like 4% of it that's actually bad, and I just take it. Water off a duck's back, but there are maybe a percentage of it. There's a percentage of it that's threatening, and some of it quite detailed. And I've had to take that to authorities, and I've had some attacks in terms of oh gosh, I don't want to sound paranoid, but I've had all kinds of weird internet issues and problems that I thought initially were just coincidence, but then I later found out through the admission of people who told me things that they shouldn't have known that I was like under attack that way. And but it comes and it goes, and I don't really know what to make of it other than, well, shoot, I gotta keep looking into this, because I don't think I've run into anything that was so controversial that it warrants that kind of a thing. So to me, I must have only just hit the tip of the iceberg, and maybe they just don't want me finding out anymore. That's the only thing I could think. I'm not really sure about that.
Maybe try to passively push you out of the investigations,
And it also could just be trolls. I mean, at the end of the day, it could always just be trolls. So who knows?
You know what I always say? Because if you ever go onto YouTube, you can find anything like Star Wars. I mean, a great movie like Star Wars, right? The original. And you'll see trolls like bashing the heck out of it. So, I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. People are going to complain. They're always going to have a bug. You know what I mean? So that's what I've noticed. Even if it could be the best thing in the world and somebody's going to have an issue with it. So, yeah.
I was just talking about this with somebody the other day. They were telling me, Jane Goodall, who seems to be pretty much revered in all ways possible. She has a big team of haters on her too. People are tearing her book apart, accusing her of plagiarism and being, oh man, some of the stuff that's come out about her. So, I figure everybody has their people, and
it's almost like they're getting paid. It's almost like paid competition, if you ask me. You know what? If people don't like something, why don't they just switch it off and don't read it? What's the problem? I mean, why do they have to lash out? I don't get that. I really don't.
Feeding on the negative energy, it must
totally be. Parasitic. My mother used to have that saying, and I know it's an old saying, but it's break the arrow and walk away. And literally, I believe in that. Just break the arrow and walk away, because literally, there's no point in engaging in this polarization thing that they do. But I've seen it too. I mean, I don't get them very often, but once in a while I get some bizarros, and I just, that's it. They're gone. I block them. I'm the queen of blocking.
I think so. I've had a few that I think are just trying to push my buttons because I try not to let anything get to me, and I'm generally pretty open and friendly to everybody who contacts me. So I think sometimes there are people who are just trying to see how far they can push me until I actually get mad. So I say, bring it on, kill them with kindness. I don't get mad.
They want a reaction. I'm more of the warrior spirit. I don't have any tolerance. I just kind of disconnect them. But that's my personality too. I mean, just like, you don't want my dragon energy out there, believe me. So, and so let's give everybody a reminder how to contact you, and also where they can purchase your books, obviously on Amazon. And let's talk about the new release coming up in December.
Yeah, you can visit my website. It's www.drheatherlynn.com. And there you can find everything you want. My blog, my Twitter, all my social media, whatever you want, it's right there. Videos of past interviews, everything. So you can go there. You can also email me at heather@drheatherlynn.com with any kind of interesting tips or ideas, or just if you want to tell me how much you couldn't stand what I said. It doesn't matter. I'll take any email. It's great. But I do say that I get a lot of email, and I can't necessarily get to everybody, at least in a timely manner. So if it looks like I just blew it off, or I email you a long time from now, it's because I'm one person, and I refuse to hire anybody to go through my email. So, if you get an email back from me, it's really me. So it might just be awfully late. So definitely email me with anything you want, and you can get my books. My book, Sumerian Controversy, it is a report, so it's a very short book, very short read, and that is on Amazon currently. And the follow-up to that, which is a full book, is Land of the Watchers, and that's going to be out in December. And I'm very much looking forward to that. I have a lot of surprise contributors to that as well. And awesome. So there's a lot of interesting things, and
that's great. Is there a specific day in December?
I'm not sure. I have to look at that. I think it's I know it's before the holidays.
Okay.
I think it's early.
Sweet. That's going to be awesome. Well, I applaud you for keeping up with Twitter, because I can't even do that. I'm like,
I only just started with Twitter.
I'm like, forget it.
I only just started because I had a lot of requests for it, and I'm like, well, I'll do that. I'm not sure what interesting things I have to tweet. I don't really think I have that much to say, and then I find that, well, I do. I'll just tweet this.
Oh, you do. You have a lot of good information out there. Are you kidding? I'm looking forward to all your books coming out. I know you have so much more in there in that mind of yours that you need to put out in books. So we're looking forward to that for sure. And I do want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. And of course, Heather, it's been an honor to have you on as always. You're an incredible being, and I really enjoy having you on to interview you.
No, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much to the audience for listening. I really appreciate the opportunity.
I know they're always looking forward to it over here at Dark Matter Radio Network. So, and also, let's see what we have. I'm not sure what guest is coming up next. Just hang on here for a second. We've got Researcher on a Mission with Dr. J, of course, coming up next on Dark Matter Radio Network. Yes, thank you very much, Keith. And so, with that being said, we have a few more minutes left here. So, let me ask you, is there any type of an imprint that you've ever received on a more paranormal level with some of the investigations you've done with archaeology?
An imprint? Well, I'm not quite sure but I have talked to a lot of people in terms of paranormal things. I have actually found a lot of interesting information and people involved in psychic archaeology, and that's something that I'm going to address later down the road because
Nice.
I've been amazed with some things that I've been shown, just amazed with some of the techniques. And so I didn't really know that there could be anything paranormal really with archaeology, but boy, was I schooled. I've met a lot of psychics, talked to a lot of people, and found that even through history, important archaeological sites have been found by psychics.
Nice. So, was that with dowsing or just psychic radar?
Both.
Excellent. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Have you done dowsing at all?
I have not. I've wanted to, but I've just not ventured out that far yet. I've not had an opportunity to really do it. And I'm not a professional, so I wouldn't know if I was doing it right or not. But I would love the opportunity. Oh,
yeah, I think you should do it. And I bet you anything it would work instantly for you. You don't have to be a professional. As long as you have a psychic radar system, you'd be fine. Yeah. Without a doubt. I would definitely start
maybe I should try that. I'll look into that and I'll try it just for kicks because, yeah.
I have dowsing rods here at the house, and they're fun. I love them. I find water all the time.
Really?
Yeah. And you can find other things too, but I haven't found the gold yet. But anyways, I think we're getting ready to wrap this up pretty soon here. But I want to thank you again for being on the show. It's been great having you on, and I so appreciate it and wish you the best of luck. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Keith. Have a great week.